But yeah, welcome everybody. Amazing to see you all here. From many of you from Finland and others from other countries. We have participants from all over the show. My name is Anu Pajanen, and I work for the Sitra Nature and Daily Life team, and I am really excited to spend the next 90 minutes with you. And hope you're comfortable. And yeah, let's begin. So welcome to spend the next 90 minutes together to explore the good life from new sustainable perspectives. And I come from the Nature and Daily Life team at Sitra, where we inspire and support Finns to change their lifestyles to be more sustainable in terms of nature. And we share a lot of information about sustainable lifestyles in many ways, but we have also come to recognize that information only won't get us there if the changes that we need to make are not in line with our stories of what good life really looks like. And yeah, we've just kind of recognized that if sustainable life appears as something that's kind of like our current lifestyle, but just a bit less fun, a bit less enjoyable, and a lot harder, then it's not really making us want to run towards it. And so that's why we believe that we need to think bolder and broaden our imaginations of what good life can be and what also sustainable life can be. And that's why we're here today. And that's also why we're so excited to have come across the work of Phoebe Tickle, who is with us here today as well. Phoebe Tickle, she is a systems thinker and imagination activist, and also the founder of the UK-based organization Moral Imaginations. And she believes that the vast majority of our challenges are not resource problems, but imagination problems, and that imagination is kind of like a muscle that we can flex, and we can practice and train to change the way that we see and also act in the world. And moral imagination is the capacity to believe that things can and must be different. But she will tell you much more about that very soon. Yeah. Our program today looks like this. We are now in the welcome section. And very soon I will give the word to Phoebe, who will be our main host today. And she will give us an introduction to moral imagination, and then guide us through an imagination exercise, after which we will go into breakout rooms for some lovely and lively group conversations. And after we've quite a good amount of time for those, so about 25 minutes is planned for that. And then we'll come back to the main room all together for a collective summing up and discussion. And then in the very end, I will say a few words to close and also share what we at Sitra are doing going forward regarding imagination work and imagining good sustainable lives. There's some pretty fun stuff cooking right as we speak. And then we will be finished at 11:30. The slides, there will be a recording, and the slide set will be included in that. So yes. And just a few other things before we start. This is not your typical webinar where you just kind of show up and lean back and listen and zone out. We invite you to participate. One of the juiciest parts of the program is the breakout room conversations. But just to kind of relax you, be as you are. No need to appear smart or anything you're not. If you're tired, you're tired. If you're speaking in a language that's not your first language, that is so fine. You know, we don't stress out about that kind of stuff today. Just enjoy and have fun. And we also encourage you to keep your cameras on in breakout rooms. It just kind of helps the conversation, makes the connections feel a bit more real. And it's always nice to see each other's faces. We also encourage you to participate in what we call active note-taking in the chat during the session. So whenever you hear something that really resonates with you, maybe a phrase or just something is sparked, then please do share so we can kind of collectively record the juiciest parts of the program and the insights that we get. And already mentioned the recording. So yes, the event will be recorded. Have you already? Yes, the recording is on. However, of course, like the breakout room conversations will not be included in the recording. So speak freely in the breakout rooms. Also, in the breakout rooms, if you happen to be a group of only Finnish speakers, of course you can speak Finnish, or if you're all fluent in Spanish, then go ahead and have your conversation in Spanish. Is there any questions in chat that I can't see right now? Nope. All right. Hope you enjoy, and now I will pass the word over to Phoebe. I will stop sharing and you can start.
Can you hear me okay? Amazing.
Yes.
Good. Oh, I can see all your faces on my screen. Hi, and welcome. It's so good to see so many of you, and I can see many Finnish names, so I assume that many of you are calling from Finland. My name is Phoebe Tickell, and it's just such a pleasure to be here, and we're going to spend the next hour and 20 minutes diving into this question of reimagining the good life within planetary boundaries. And I'm going to talk to you about this work that I have been growing and building and practicing over the last 5 or so years. It's called Moral Imagination, and I really hope that you enjoy learning about it. And then we're going to there's going to be a mix of things. I'm going to start by saying some words. So especially for anyone in the UK, it's still early, so you can sit back and drink your coffee and listen to me speak. And I'm going to show you some slides, just introducing some of the themes and concepts of this work. And then I'm going to give you a couple of prompts. So there's going to be a few prompts for you to journal on. That you could do that in a notepad on your computer, or you could do it if you've got a piece of paper or a journal. You can do a little bit of journaling with a pen and paper, and then we will do a guided meditation visualization. So we'll actually do a little bit of visioning of this future. What does this future look like and feel like and taste like, where actually the future that is based around life and a life-sustaining society, where our joy can coexist with the joy of the more than human world and future generations. And then you'll have a chance to unpack that, discuss it in small groups. So that's the program for today. And then we'll come back together and discuss it. So a bit of collective imagining, a bit of discussion, a bit of listening. And if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try and keep my eye on the chat, but if I miss anything, hopefully someone else in the team will catch it. Okay, well, without further ado, I will share some slides, and you can let me know that you see this okay. I cannot see you anymore, so if somebody could just give me a little yes, you can see these slides, that would be great.
Yes.
Amazing. Perfect. So here we are on this Wednesday, 8th of May morning, with the question of reimagining the good life and how can we find joy within planetary boundaries. I absolutely love this question, because I often think that within the sustainability movement, we have unfortunately sometimes tended towards talking about sustainability and environmentalism as something that needs to take away from life, to take away from what brings us alive and brings us joy. And actually, I really believe that our joy is deeply entangled with the joy of the earth and the joy of future generations and even the joy of our ancestors, and that through us becoming more aligned with the needs and the desires of all of life on the planet, we can actually live much more full, rich and happy lives, because we will be in harmony and sync with the way the earth works. So I think this is a fantastic prompt. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to Citra, and to Anu and to Sami, who reached out quite a while ago now. I think it was about 3 months ago, and catalyzed this conversation. We've been talking about this, and this is the fruit of a couple of months of discussion. So I'm really, really pleased to be here, and I'm really a big fan of the work that Citra is doing in this area, especially around imagination. So I know they're going to say something at the end about that. So big thank you for having me here. So I always start just by introducing myself a little bit more. And I have been told that my choice of photographs of myself is not, it could be improved. This is a scrappy picture of me at age 21 as a scientist. So this is my background. I started my life in the labs of Imperial College London and Cambridge University. And in these labs, I was researching life. I was researching molecular biology and genetics. And it was ironic, because I'd gone into biology and science because I wanted to actually get closer to life. I wanted to really understand how living systems work, and how life and biology organizes, and I was fascinated by this. I was also an artist, so as you can see, I'm wearing a tie-dye t-shirt. That's a t-shirt I made myself. I always loved creativity and art. And essentially how I got from being a scientist, a slightly hippie scientist, to being an imagination activist, is that really I came to have quite a existential reckoning as a scientist, because I came to realize that science and technology was based on a paradigm that was running that actually I realized I didn't want to contribute to. And over the last 8 years since leaving my role as a scientist, what I've come to see is that actually this is, we have many names for this system. Some people call it capitalist modernity, some people call it neoliberalism, some people just call it capitalism, and other people just call it business as usual. This is how life works. But what I realized at that age, I and slowly unpack later, but what I did realize then was that actually I don't think that we need new technology and science in order to save the world. And I don't know if you can see, but like kind of air quotes, save the world. I realized, as Anu said in the introduction, that actually we have everything we need. We have all the knowledge and the technology and the intelligence to create a life-sustaining society, a society that works for all life. And so that marked the beginning of a journey of asking, but then what is it that is holding us back? If we have that knowledge and we have all of the skills and knowledge we need, what is it that is holding us back? What is is there something missing? Is there, that's been the journey of the last almost 10 years. And that journey led me to work in governance, and eventually to start the organization Moral Imaginations 4 years ago, which works at building a movement of moral imagination to help imagine how the world could be and should be, based on principles of life and a life-sustaining society. So that's not a short introduction, but I thought it's important just to give you a bit of a taste of who I am and where I'm coming from. And this is a little bit about the organization Moral Imaginations. We're a not-for-profit organization, and our mission is to catalyze a movement of moral imagination and to activate people as what we call imagination activists, which I'll talk a bit about later. It's a new kind of activist that we see as, complementary to the traditional activists who are fighting the current system and stopping the harms that are happening, which is very, very important. But we also see that there's space for a new kind of activist that is helping envision and enact this new society, this new way of organizing, a new way of organizing that isn't fully formed or born yet, but we are helping imagine it and bring it into action. And so we talk about helping people shift the way they see the world and turn this bold vision into ethical action. So that's who we are. And, I don't think I need to talk so much about why this is so important at this time. Even just looking at these images really brings for me, like a felt sense of pain, because I think about all the damage that we are doing, around the world right now, whether it's in Palestine and Gaza and what is happening there, or in, the Great Barrier Reef and the massive coral bleachings that are happening. We really are at a crisis point, and there are many stories going on at once right now about what this current moment is. But we have these facts. We know that last July we had the hottest month on record happen, and that means it's the hottest month in 120,000 years. We know that by the end of the decade, it's estimated that plastic production will increase by 40%. And actually, scientists predict that by 2050, they expect that there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish by weight. 8 years ago, the world's leaders came together in a great act of collective imagination and ambition, and made the Paris Agreement, saying that we will limit global heating by 1.5 degrees. And we're now looking at the end of this decade, we're already on track to reach 2 degrees. And many people predict that by the end of the century, we'll be reaching 3 to 4 degrees of warming. And 3 degrees of warming means 40% of biodiversity loss of the whole planet. So I don't mean to bring a downer on your Wednesday morning, but really this work of imagining how the world can and should be different is and it needs to be rooted in a real reckoning with what is happening on Earth and a real feeling. A lot of this work is actually about bringing feeling and emotion back into the picture, back into sustainability and environmentalism, because so much of our business as usual, especially in business, but also organizations and institutions, is based on taking feeling out of the equation. And actually, our ethical and moral compasses are very connected to feeling. We talk about having a gut feeling when something doesn't feel quite right. And actually now we know that our bacteria, our guts are full of bacteria that actually connect to our brains. And that's not like pseudoscience. It's real microbiological science that actually we feel with our guts and we think it's connected to our feelings and our minds. But so it's all that to say that it's important to feel to really feel and allow this to get in and to absorb in the kind of gravity of the situation we face right now, but not to get stuck there, because on the other side of that, so many people are starting to wake up and be activated and to take action, and that brings me so much hope and joy and excitement. This is quite a bold statement. We've been lied to, but part of this work of moral imagination is about connecting to reality. And actually, there's a beautiful quote by an author called Glennon Doyle, who says, "Perhaps imagination is not where we go to escape reality, but actually perhaps it's where we go to remember reality." And this is really at the core of moral imagination. This is how we reconnect to the truth of who we are as human beings, of what we're capable of doing together when we really come together and put our mind to it, and also the truth of the fact that we can live on this earth in a life-affirming, life-sustaining way. And so these are the kinds of things that I uncovered over my journey as I left science and technology and moved into the work I do today, is that actually these three things, and there are more, but these three feel very core, are not true. So one, that capitalism and an extractive, life-destroying economy is all there is and all there can be. That's the writer Mark Fisher talks about how it's easier to imagine the end of the world than it is to imagine the end of capitalism. But actually, all kind of economical or political economical systems in the past have come to an end, and communism rose and fell, and this system needs to change too. And so realizing that actually things can be different and we could organize life in a different way is very important. The other kind of lie that or mistruth, untruth that we need to confront is this lie that there is not enough to go around and therefore someone must always lose out. And so it's a zero-sum game to the bottom. And the zero-sum game, that means that someone always wins, someone always loses. So therefore, you have to make sure you win, and you have to make sure that you win and you kind of crush anybody else around you. And so this is the kind of competition myth, the myth that we must compete as a way to organize ourselves. And this fits very nicely with the last one, which is that humans are selfish and greedy by nature, which is literally kind of embedded in our economy textbooks that university students read when they study economy, and that humans are selfish and greedy, and that the best way to do society is to encourage this competition. And so I just encourage you for this workshop to consider, like, what if all of this is completely not the truth and it's not the right story about who we are and what is possible? And so through this, we can act and we can exercise this muscle of moral imagination, which we define as imagination on behalf of the welfare of the whole, by using our moral imagination, by connecting to what we know to be true about the nature of human beings who are creative, wise, who care, who are willing to suffer on behalf of the planet, who are willing to do what it takes, and who can come together and really create a different way of doing things. This is what we can reconnect to, this sense, and then we can exercise this imagination of, okay, if we actually took a different set of truths to be true, namely that humans are kind, creative, wise, ethical, and trustworthy, that a different society is possible that actually doesn't extract from the planet, doesn't pollute it, but actually puts life at the center. And the third one, that actually we have enough technology, we have enough science, we have enough skills and materials, and that a different world based on these truths is possible. This is the action, this is the muscle of moral imagination. And we don't pretend to know what the outcome will be. And my mentor and great friend and teacher, Joanna Macy, she talks about how actually it's part of this mighty adventure that we're on, because if we knew what would happen, if we knew the outcome, it wouldn't be as exciting, which I always love as a nice reframe. If we knew that we would succeed and that, everything will be happily ever after, it wouldn't be such a gripping adventure. So this curriculum and methodology that we've developed, it brings the wider world into the room. So it's a way of connecting to the more than human world, to future generations, to also connect with where we've come from, to our ancestors, and to actually connect to this sense that a different future is possible. And that is that's what we do. That's moral imagination. So that's a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to skip through a couple of slides because I'd love to get to the prompts, because I'm sure as you listen to this, there are all sorts of maybe some thoughts and feelings, and I'm sure things are arising in you. This is a mantra at the core of this work, and at the core of Moral Imaginations, that we don't have resource problems, we have imagination problems, which kind of boils down much of what I just said into quite a simple statement. And it just means that we actually have the power to change things. It's not about a kind of lack of technical know-how. And there are many great imagination activists in history, people that changed the entire premise and paradigm, and created completely new ways, whether that's in law or policy or regulations, or created completely new worlds. And Martin Luther King, Dr. King, is such an inspiration for me, because to me, he is one of the best examples of an imagination activist. He saw that the world should be different and was out of line with the promise of, for him, American society, saying that it was based on freedom and equality and brotherhood, but actually that wasn't quite true, because for African Americans, they were living a very different reality. And so that work of moral imagination and imagination activism brings reality closer to actually our aspirations and our values. And so this is what it means to be an imagination activist. So I'd like to show this doorway as it's a bit of a tool that we use just to give people this image of a doorway. So we think of this as a portal. And the way that you can use this is to think that through this door, through that portal, which you can even close your eyes and you can see it in your imagination, through that portal, a different world exists. And that world, even though it doesn't exist yet, just like future generations don't exist yet, it does exist. And we can actually access it. We can travel to it. We can travel to it in our imaginations for now, but it does exist. And, in this world, each of you will have a different world through that portal. In the world I come from, in my world that I access through that portal, the rivers are swimmable, and they're even drinkable. And in this future that I come from, people actually swim to work in the Thames in central London. And in 2027, it was incredible. We finally kind of had the legislation which said this river, the River Thames, is now actually drinkable, so people can drink from it, because we managed to clean up all of the water pollution in record time within 3 years of that happening. And in this world too, governments have been replaced with citizen assemblies. So people come together to decide what's right for them, and they come together in their towns and communities, and that feeds up into bigger decisions for entire nations. In this world, refugees are welcome. We coexist with people that look very different from us, who speak different languages. And in this world too, schools are a place of joy and thriving, and really center learning around the needs of the students, and people go to school and they feel excited and safe and seen, and we teach across head, hearts, and hands. There is a curriculum that is incredibly interdisciplinary, and children are spend a lot of their time outside, and there are schools in forests, and nature connection is at the heart of the curriculum. So I just wanted to give you a taste of what my world, that I morally imagine and which fuels me, what that world looks like. And actually, what I really invite you to do, this is obviously quite a short workshop, but what I really invite you to do is that, the more that you can put images and details on your world that exists through this portal, the more you can step into being an imagination activist, because the more naturally you can speak to people about this world and actually really help them feel that it is real and it is possible. So we'll be doing a bit of imagining, which hopefully will give you some starting material. I'm sure many of you have already got lots of starting material too. But this is really one of the core tools and skills of an imagination activist, is to have this really tangible world that you can dip into, especially when you're reading the news or becoming really frustrated or like you feel like giving up. You can tap into this world and you can gain energy from it. So I'm going to move into our prompts. I just wanted to say a key thing is that at the heart of this work is this image of widening circles. And I love to show this image of a pond with the ripples. We are single humans, but we are deeply interdependent and interconnected with all of life, whether that's our immediate communities or the wider Earth community of all living things that exist right now. And you can use your imagination to imagine, right now there are orangutans currently right now alive in the Amazon rainforest, in the the other side of the planet. There are snakes, there are dolphins, there are narwhals, there are whales. They're not fantastical figments of our imagination. These creatures all exist right now, and they are here. Just because we can't see them and touch them, they are part of this widening circle of life. And we do have a responsibility to life. And then the widening out again in time, you can start to widen out to future generations, and back in time to our ancestors, and to really connect with where we've come from. And if we actually expand back enough in time, we start to reach our ancestors that are non-human. So being descended from apes, and before that from small mammals, and before that actually from bacterial cells. So actually we are incredibly interconnected just by our very being. So the core questions of this session are: what if we could live in a way that served not only us, but also future unborn generations in the more than human world? And what if our joy is actually entangled with the joy of others, past, present, and future? So now I'm going to just invite you to either take a notepad, or if you've got a piece of paper, I'd just love to invite you to journal around these 4 prompts. You might choose 1 or 2, whichever one really speaks to you, and we'll just journal for about 6 minutes. It's a chance just to really digest and reflect on the things that we've just talked about. And so these prompts are: what kind of future are future generations longing for? What kind of future is nature longing for? Or even at the core, what kind of future am I longing for? Or my community? So it might be nice to choose, maybe 1 from the first 2, future generations in nature, and 1 from the bottom 2. So what are you longing for? What is your community longing for? And so I give you just 6 minutes to do that, and then we will get into some imagining at 40 past the hour. Okay, so thank you for taking that time and reflecting. And there is a beautiful quote from Don DeLillo, who wrote the book Underworld, who says, "Longing on a large scale is what makes history." Longing on a large scale is what makes history. So building this longing for how the world can be different, and entangling that longing, not just with our own longing, but actually the longing of the more than human world and the longing of future generations, is, I think, extremely powerful. So rather than, I doubt that anybody in this Teams call is longing for a new Mercedes-Benz, or kind of longing for the latest handbag from whatever brand. But there's a difference, right? You can have imagination, and you can have moral imagination. You can have longing for things, or longing for a different world, entangled with the longing of also these other actors that we can bring alive through oral imagination. So before we go into breakouts, we're going to do a bit of a short visioning exercise. Hopefully you've kind of unearthed some images or some things that that you're longing for and that you imagine future generations and nature to also long for. And so I really invite you to close your eyes, and perhaps at this point you want to turn your camera off, to give yourself, that privacy of just being able to relax, allow yourself to, exit the more analytical brain, and allow yourself to just relax and allow your imagination to come alive. So if you want to put a nice way to kind of ground yourself is to put your feet on the ground, both feet on the ground, maybe kind of sitting up a little bit or straightening up if you've been slouching, and just lowering or closing your eyes and allowing yourself to relax. And you might do that by just focusing on your breath, the breathing in and out, and notice how that makes your chest and your stomach rise. And then breathing out, you can just allow yourself to relax. So relax your legs, your belly, your arms, relax your facial muscles, and allow yourself to have a moment of calm, a moment of connection with yourself and this moment. And I'd love you in your mind's eye. So, when you're just relaxing, there's no particular image that is coming up, but you can use this power of active imagination to bring up in your mind's eye the image of this doorway that I showed you before. And, it's a portal, and you might be able to see things through it. There might be light streaming in from this portal. And I'd like you to imagine that through this portal exists the world in 2050. And this world is the result of us having done everything we possibly could to create this life-sustaining society. And on the other side of this portal, there are people and more than human life is living together in a thriving way. And it's the result of the longing of you, your community, the more than human world, and of future generations. This world is literally the outcome of the kind of world future generations would be joyous to receive and to inherit. And I'd love for you to enter this portal in your mind and invite images of what do you see? How is this society structured? How are people living? You might see streets. You might be able to see buildings, and maybe you've got a bird's eye view. Maybe you're kind of like a bird flying above this 2050 vision. Maybe you find yourself suddenly standing in a city center or a town center. Maybe there are no towns and centers in this world. But I'd love you to get a taste of this future. What does a neighborhood look like in this world? How are people living? Are they living in houses or buildings? Are they living in communities? What is the relationship between these people and nature? And what is the state of nature? How has nature perhaps rewilded or regenerated? I'd love for you to imagine, what are the sounds that you can hear? Is there bird song? Can you hear the buzz of insects? Are there any mechanical machine noises? Is there any kind of humming or uh, engines of any kind? Maybe there are noises that you don't recognize. And in this world, I'd love you to zoom in to yourself, in this world, or the life of a person living their daily life. Doesn't have to be you, but it could be could be one of your descendants. It could be another person, a member of the future generations, and they're living their daily life. And when they wake up, how do they feel? What is that? What is it like? Do they get ready for work? Is there still such a thing as work in the same way that we have now or today? How does this life-sustaining society, this society that has sustained itself and is transformed and has life at the center, how does it show up in the inner dialogue of this person? How does it show up in their inner thoughts? Maybe when they think about nature or the world or the future. How does it feel to be a human being alive in such a world and society? And perhaps this person has some children, some kids. How do they go to school? And is school the same as it is now? Has it changed radically? Maybe the learning happens in community. And when you go outside into your neighborhood, maybe on your way to work or to the community center, who do you meet? Who do you bump into? Can you smell the smell of perhaps a brewery or a bakery? How is food grown in this world? What does it smell like to walk through the streets of your neighborhood? Maybe there's fresh fruit or grocers around. And the streets, maybe you notice, are they car free? Are people cycling? What's happening on the streets of your neighborhood? Are there children playing? And what is even the role of technology in this world? How is technology showing up? And soon it's time to step back through your portal back into the time of 2024. But before you leave, is there any last message? Is there anything that you know to be true about this world? If someone was explaining what it's like to live in this world, what would they say to you? And when you're ready, you can come back through your portal, back to the moment right now. Landing back, you might want to scribble down, maybe there's a couple words or phrases that came to you during this short meditation. And perhaps it was quite emotional. I just want to say that, imagining the world and how it could be, and based on what we really long for, can be quite, a vulnerable process, and it can bring up that real sense of longing and emotion. So, yeah, just invite you to kind of be with yourself if that is the case, and know that you probably aren't alone in that. That when we activate that longing, it's such a strong force. And it's a beautiful thing. So if you want to take a few moments just to capture any images or phrases, and I think then we will move into breakout rooms for 20 minutes. I think is what we'll do. And you'll be in a group of 4, 5, I think. Yeah. Anu?
Yeah. Mainly just what I wanted to say is that sometimes when we open breakout rooms, there's a bit of a decrease in participants. So if you happen to be in a space where you can't participate in the breakout room conversation right now, then we maybe ask you to step out of the call at the moment, so that then when we create the breakout rooms, it doesn't happen that somebody ends up being alone because some people who had to go for a moment left at the call. So if you need to step out for some reason, then now is a good moment to do it, and then you can return in the next 20 minutes, and then Sami will create the breakout rooms. But we very much invite you all to join. I'm really looking forward to the conversations myself.
Yes, we don't want to encourage you to leave, because
no,
this is a very rich. It's rich to come together and discuss. So if you can stay, please do.
I think it's okay to start creating, and Teams is a bit slow with breakout rooms, so Sami will now create them, and then he'll open them, and then it takes them a few seconds before they actually open, but we'll get there.
Nice. Oh, and we have some prompting questions for the breakout room chat. I'll just put those in to the chat now. There are 2 questions. So what did I discover? Share a bit about what you saw. You've got 20 minutes, so you can really take a couple minutes each to share. And then maybe a discussion in the whole group. Is it possible that we can live a good life in a way that serves not only us, but also future unborn generations and the more than human world? That's the question to discuss.
Thank you. And I am I am subtly inserting myself into your screens. Thank you so much, Phoebe, for hosting us, and for the introduction, and for guiding us through these conversations. It was amazing to hear and read everybody's dreams, and because we believe there's so much power in this kind of imagining together, and also sharing our imaginations with each other. Sitra is currently building this toolkit for good life imagination. So we are creating a website which is going to have different easy to use tools for different contexts. There's going to be some short kind of warm-up types of games for anybody to really quickly just dip their toe into imagining good sustainable life. There's going to be group exercises, a bit lighter versions, and a bit kind of more deep dive exercises and things you can do by yourself as well. And we are this month finishing up these tools, We've been working on them all spring with a brilliant group of developers, 30 people from around Finland, and they are almost ready, and we are working on the website over the summer. So hopefully by the end of the summer or latest in the autumn, we will publish these, and you will find them on the Sitra website. So stay tuned. You can follow the Kestävyysratkaisut email list to get news for where they come out. And Sami or Laura, if you could post that in the chat, so how you can join the Sustainability Solutions email list. Thank you so much. I noticed we're already a minute past, so if some people have to leave, you have to leave. That's okay. One more thing is that the first version of the toolkit will be in Finnish, and there will be other language versions coming out later. But just for you international audience members, it will come in English and Swedish, but just a bit later. So we'll first put out the first version in. So that's some exciting stuff to look forward to. Thank you so much, everybody, for this wonderful 1.5 hours. It was truly a joy, and thank you especially to Phoebe Tickell, whose last name I now learned how to pronounce. Cheers, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. And I put also some links in the chat if you want to follow my work. Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Just in case you administrators didn't see this, because people asked for the transcript in the chat and Teams doesn't make it easy, I took a screenshot of all of those. So if you organizers can give me an email address, I can send all those photos, screenshots, so you can share them to the participants afterwards if you like.